Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Unstuck movement. As always, I'm your host, Rob Z. This platform is created to help you get unstuck personally and professionally. So we bring incredible guests on who have true testimonies of breakthrough. Today, the wonderful, the powerful Paul H. Flowers Jr. is on the show. And Paul, I like to dive in with a question right off the bat, jump right into the heart of the matter, because I love to get into the nitty and gritty. You've made it a mission in your life to educate others about not playing it safe, taking risk in life, putting yourself out there. And of course, that involves learning the hard way, right? So I'm curious, maybe the biggest personal lesson that you had to learn the hard way before you could authentically teach it to others?
Oh man. Well, Rob, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me here on the show. Again, live streaming across the internet this morning. I'm joining you from a conference. I'll talk about that in just a bit. But to get right into that question, man, I've got to go back to go forward. So the context of where I am actually has a lot to do with that exact question, meaning jumping out there, essentially learning that lesson the hard way and not playing it safe. So this story starts about 11 years ago. Corporate health insurance on the individual side, and loved it. Right, I had a short learning curve, so I came in, phew, rose right to the top. Top agent on the first campaign, left because I was under contract. They called me to come back. Top agent on this next campaign across multiple states, meaning number one out of all of the people that were doing it. And again, with very little experience, but a lot of life experience. And then that moved me into management and ultimately the trainer for the company, where there were some things going on, right? Legal, yes. Moral and ethical, not so much. And it's that thing about speaking up, right? It's speaking up. And I love the logo that you have for the Unstuck movement, which is breaking free essentially of those shackles. In this instance, the shackles that were there were the corporate shackles of silence, where I was literally supposed to overlook the fact that the thing that we were training people to sell was not the best option for the client. So that in and of itself brought me to the point of, you know what? I've got to do something different. I've got to do what resonates with my heart. So November 1st, 2017, I politely exited stage left for that company after completing the training of the individuals that they needed to be trained for open enrollment. I still trained them on the integral way to do the business while also letting them know how to sell the specific product that was more profitable to the company. Because in that instance, and in another instance that I'll share in just a moment, these companies tend to put profits over people. And that's the problem that I kept running into, especially when I would speak up. So the biggest problem that I've been coming across, again, I'll fast forward now to 2022. I had sold my book of business to partner up with a large multinational employee benefits brokerage. And what I found out there was almost more sickening than what I found out on the individual side, where we sat in a room and the gentleman that, so a brokerage is actually the company that offers multiple types of insurance to an employer, right? So in this instance, this brokerage offered this one particular company's insurance. I can't say their name just for I don't want those those nasty cease and desist letters to come. But my favorite color used to be blue when I was growing up, and now it's not, right?
Mm.
So the gentleman comes in from this carrier and he puts up their book of business on the wall. And Rob, what I saw at that moment, it just made my stomach sink. The conversation they had about renewals. A renewal is when you go from one year to the next and just keep paying your premiums as a company and as employees. And what they said about the renewal process, it had me floored. The conversation was about how good of a financial year this company had, how friends they were with HR and the CEO of this company, as to whether or not their premiums would go up, down, or stay the same for the
Mm.
following year. And I'm just sitting in the back because I'm only a month and a half in with this brokerage. And I'm like, wait a second. They're not talking about health. They're not talking about the issues that people are having with the plans. They're not talking about the health of the consumers. They're not talking about the concerns of the companies as to adjustments that need to be made. They're talking about bottom line profit. And it dawned on me, all of these major carriers, we call them the BUCAs, the Blue Cross, United, Cigna, and Aetna, they're all publicly traded companies. And if you look at their stock prices for the last 10, 20 years, there's no dips, my friend. They go up and to the right on that chart. And because they're beholden to the stockholders and not the actual end users of the plan, there tends to be misaligned incentives. And again, to further answer that question, when you speak up about those misaligned incentives, sometimes problems happen. Sometimes people ignore you. Sometimes you get shunned by certain previous friends and colleagues, which has been the case in my instance. And I had to deal with that.
Mm.
I had to deal with losing friends from that brokerage and other brokerages that I began to connect and converse with in my short tenure there. And though I played the game, so to speak, as I learned more of how it was played on the inside, I learned it at an expert level so that I can then turn around and not only form my own business and grow it the way that, from a structural standpoint, that company was sound, but from an integral standpoint, I learned a lot of things that I would absolutely not do and the absolute way that I wanted to do it, which is with trust and transparency at the forefront of any of the engagements that I have, whether it be with the employee, the janitor at the outside the door, or the CEO and the C-suite from the conversations that we'd have about making those actual changes.
Yeah, it's so obvious, right? Well, it's so obvious this is what corporations do, but it's also so obvious that it's all when things are really powerful, when they work really well, when they make a huge impact and change. It's about the people,
Right.
and they focus on people, and it can be, especially in the world we live in, it can be easy to lose sight of that because, like you said, I mean, everybody looks at profit, they look at the numbers, especially when you get into big business.
Absolutely.
The bottom line, it's easier to look at numbers than it is to look at people,
Hmm.
right? It's maybe safer in some ways to look at numbers than look at people. Maybe safer is not the right word. It's less vulnerable.
There we go.
It's less difficult to look at profits and not look at people because numbers don't have feelings.
Exactly.
People do, right? Numbers don't have families. People do.
Hmm.
So, okay. Before we go any further, I just want to pause for a second and welcome everybody here to the platform. The Unstuck movement was created to help you find breakthrough personally and professionally. So we bring incredible guests on who have found these breakthroughs in their life and in their business. Today, obviously, we're talking leadership. We're talking about toxic workplace, financial freedom, hustle and heart, educating and elevating. And we're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. So when I name those things, one of the companies I think of is the Connected Leaders Academy. Over 500 entrepreneurs, heart-centered leaders from all over the world helping each other grow. You can find out more about them at connectedleadersacademy.com, and also the Pro Podcaster Academy. So if you're somebody who wants to launch your platform, maybe you've been thinking about it for a while and you just don't know how to pull the trigger on that, I'd love to help you get you started to have a platform that creates lasting impact in your life, that makes incredible connections personally and professionally for you, makes you the go-to authority in your industry, the expert in your space. And also, if you have a platform, how do you streamline that? How do you monetize that? I'd love to help you with that. Go to RobZWentz.com for more information. Paul H. Flowers Jr. today with us is a seasoned entrepreneur and sales leader who founded Superior Insurance Advisors and Life Health and legal education partners to empower underserved communities with healthcare, financial, and legal literacy. He blends business acumen with authentic storytelling to help others succeed in leadership, marriage, and entrepreneurship. So going back, as you decided to make that jump, I want to talk about how it changed you, right? So
Absolutely.
stepping out on your own, the challenges that come from that. I think one of the best parts of this podcast is I get to talk to people who maybe haven't made the leap yet, who haven't stepped out on their own yet, and they feel stuck in that place. How did things change for you? How did your life transform as you decided to make that jump?
Oh my goodness. We all love stories, as you shared in the introduction there. And that authentic storytelling is the best way that I can talk about this transformation. Uh, so, a shameless plug, I had taken some training through an organization called Landmark Worldwide. And I don't get any cookies or toasters or anything if somebody goes there and takes the forum. But I bring that up as a precursor to the fact that I'd been in personal development, Rob, for 10 years, right? At least prior to getting into healthcare in 2014, and then again, kind of making that ascend. And a lot of the books and things that I read were helpful. I've gone to the Tony Robbins events, I've walked on hot coals, I've broken arrows on my neck and all that good stuff. And none of that had the impact that Landmark did. So I bring that up to start the conversation because what I was allowed to do after coming through that event and essentially having a personal transformation was to look at life from the lens of possibility. And it was with that possibility, that understanding of possibility, that I realized, hey, I can do this, right? Whatever this is, I can do this. I think I took that training in 2012, 2013, and that's actually what helped me to ascend so quickly through the ranks when I stepped into corporate health insurance in 2014. So that was kind of like the dirty little secret where they were like, how the hell are you closing this? And how are you having these conversations? It wasn't just me. It was the path that I had chosen to get to that point. So there was an investment. Again, y'all can research and look that up on your own. But I had also been heavily invested in Toastmasters throughout that same 10-year time period, again, prior to coming into corporate health. So a funny story, I was in college and undergrad, and it's like 20 years ago, and I was a janitor. And I just got introduced to legal services, which is prepay legal at the time. It was a form of insurance in 16 states and still is. That's how I got introduced into the insurance industry. So I'm cleaning this person's office, and this gentleman who was a floater, he comes and he's overhearing my conversation because as I'm cleaning their office, I'm talking to somebody about prepay legal. I'm excited about learning this way to have attorneys for 87 cents a day and save on legal fees because I had a couple legal issues with driving, and it cost me dearly to keep it off my record, like thousands of dollars. And this is at 19 years old, mind you. So this gentleman's listening to me have this conversation. And after the conversation, he says to me, man, was that conversation about business? I'm like, yeah. He said, you sounded terrible. I said, wait a second. We're in Southern Illinois, 5 hours south of Chicago, where I'm from. And that south side of Chicago mentality came back. Bro, you don't know me. Right? Hold on. Who you talking to? Okay, but I didn't say it, but I thought it. And because I'd already begun that journey of personal development, I learned to think before I speak, to ask questions and inquire before getting upset, right? To keep my emotions in check. So I asked him very candidly, I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, your conversation was full of so many uhs and ahs, and you were like almost stuttering and talking fast at times. Like if you were talking about something business related, I wouldn't have bought from you, is all I'm saying. I bit my lip, said, okay, thanks, and walked off. Right now, mind you, this guy didn't know me really from Adam. He was a floater, so he wasn't a usual person that was there. He might have seen me 2, 3 times in this life. And the fact that he felt comfortable saying that is another story. But the fact that he said it changed the direction of my life. I went home that day. And what he didn't know was just that a couple of weeks before, I was at a little class, a training to speak in front of people about the prepay legal, again, Legal Shield now, in their group school. And somebody gave me this card that talked about this organization called Toastmasters. I went home that day, finished wrapping up my garbage bags, clocked out, drove home. And I went home that day. I found that card that somebody just gave me a couple weeks before, hopped on the internet, found the local Toastmasters club where in Southern Illinois, there's only one. And they met every week, thankfully, unlike the clubs that I'd found in the Chicagoland area that meet every other week. This club met every week. And Rob, for the next 5 years, for the next 5 years, I was at every single meeting with the exception of five. So, excuse me, I take that back. For the next 3 years, I went to every single meeting with the exception of five. So in 3 years, I was there every week, either speaking, contributing in some sort of volunteer capacity on the leadership side, and that helped me to again couple with the landmark worldwide to not only look at life differently, but then to articulate the things that were going on in such a way that people can understand. And side note, I know it's a long-winded answer to the question, but in doing those things, I personally still, not still, excuse me, I felt more prepared when it was time to take that leap because I knew within my being of beings, my faith being centered, I feel like I have a very good connection to the source. And that little voice just said, you can do this, right? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And with that, little voice saying, "Don't be afraid, and you can do this." I had to make sure to remind myself of that versus the other voice that was like, "Man, this and this can happen, right? You can mess up. It might not look good, right? They might blacklist you in the industry." When I stepped out of corporate health insurance the first time,
Mhm.
so getting over that fear and ultimately leaning into the faith that it was possible. Again, looking at things from the realm of possibility. That if somebody else can do it, whether they look like me or not, and I had a big thing about that growing up. But if somebody else, another human being, can do this thing, oh, get out of my way. So can
Yeah. And faith plays so much in that. I'm just speaking on a personal level,
I. Absolutely.
because so many roadblocks are created by ourselves and our self-doubt, and that voice saying, well, no, you can't do it, no, don't try it, you're going to look stupid, right? You're not the right person for it, it's not for you. But if you have a close connection to God, you can push past those things with confidence, sometimes with some trepidation, right? But you still step forward with courage,
Right.
stepping out in the face of fear. And that's the biggest thing. And that's what I hear you saying, man, is it's the courage. Like, yeah, I might be afraid of this. This might be scary, but I'm going to do it anyways,
That's
because
it.
I know I'm protected. I know I'm loved and cared for, and I'm going to make it happen because I know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And especially, I can't imagine, man. We had a guy recently on here, Donnie Beaver. He started an organization called the Gloria Gates Foundation. Him and I'd love to connect you to him, actually.
Okay.
Him and Dr. Zane Gates, they've done the same thing. Is they've gone against modern day healthcare, and that is such an uphill battle. You're going against the grain in such a major way in our society, but it's so needed for our society, right?
Absolutely.
It's so needed. So I love that. So going into, let's just shift gears for a second. Um, Talking about building teams and getting people behind you. This is something that I love to talk about, because being a leader means people are going to follow, and if people are going to follow, that means you're going to have a team, and you're going to be somebody who leads. And how do you build teams? How do you build something that people want to follow? What are some of the go-to things for you, that must-haves to be a
Mhm.
great leader?
Ironically enough, again, here at this conference, Ascend, where I'm at in Salt Lake City, Utah, we had the pleasure of hearing from Sir Winston Churchill. And you might say, wait, Sir Winston Churchill, this is 2025. And I
Yeah.
don't know what clock you're on, buddy, but I think that gentleman might have clocked out. Right? There was a gentleman by the name of Randy Otto who was the only family endorsed, meaning the Churchill family endorsed this gentleman, the only family endorsed, I'll call it impersonator for all intents and purposes, of Sir Winston Churchill. And we had a very intimate dinner 2 nights ago, and then he actually did a performance for the rest of the group on last night. And in that dinner, he'd share with me a little card with 8 leadership, essentially quotes on them. And 2 of those are the 2 that I'll touch on in terms of building teams, because they resonated with me, but they also were things that I had reflected in my years of building teams throughout the years. And the first one is having a vision. It
Hmm.
seems just so, rudimentary. Like, this is, oh, everybody talks about having a vision, right? Yes, we might all have sight. Okay, for again those that are not visually impaired, we might all have sight. We can see a thing. We can see words on paper. We can see a business plan drawn out. But to truly have a vision is something that you can embody and then act upon. And through your actions, you communicate and actually give that energy to those around you. So
Yeah.
having that vision is more than just putting words on a piece of paper and maybe shouting it from the sideline. It's embodying it with who you be, and I use that term purposely, who you be, in any given sense. It's an ontological term, if you want to, for the listeners out there. Why is he using the incorrect grammar? But if you study ontology, then you'll get it. But who you be is almost more important than what you say. And from that standpoint, having that vision, when it lives in you and through you, it then reaches out to the people around you, such that the second point that I'll touch on is, as Sir Winston Churchill noted, touch the troops. right? Touch the troops. So it's one thing to lead from an ivory tower. It's one thing to have a vision from 1,000 miles away. And in today's virtual environment, yes, that might be more commonplace. And like he said at the dinner, don't skip the in-person. Don't skip the in-person. And Rob, I can't wait to actually meet you personally and shake your hand and see your warm eyes. But there's nothing that'll replace the actual warm handshakes and eye-to-eye communication that humans have. Right. Right now, I'm looking at silicone and glass and plastic pieces and all that. And you look great, mind you. Right.
Hey, you too. Thanks.
I love that the people that are watching this get to experience this all around the world. Right. So I'm truly, truly, and I mean truly, thankful for technology. And when it comes to building something large and long lasting, that vision is so important, that who you be must be, it must come out of your pores. And when it comes out of your pores, it must land on people. Okay, not plastic. So as it comes through your pores, and though we've done a really good job with being able to even transmit emotion through screens, like screenwriters do it all the time, there's that little added edge. Then when you can get people together and feel their energy in the room, and they can feel your energy in the room, right? You might need to calm them down from the stresses of life first before you can then amp them up with the enthuse of who you are and who you be. So I'll say with those two things, having that vision that it's exemplified through who you are and who you be, and then being able to touch the troops. So actually physically being in the presence of those who you'd like to impact and lead.
Man, yeah, you couldn't have said it better there. That is the absolute truth. And you can make great connections. And I say this in my coaching too, right? You can make great connections virtually, and you can build some great relationships. I've built what I would consider to be real, true friendships, business and professionally, on a virtual level.
Absolutely.
But nothing can touch in person. And if I'm doing coaching and I can get actually in front of somebody and be with them on a weekly basis, I'd rather do that, even if I got to drive a little bit to get there, because you can't. There's just something different about it. And people might say to you, "No, I can make an impact just as much online." I don't believe it. I believe you can make an impact online. I believe it is possible to make an impact, but
Absolutely.
You are more impactful in person. And that's just how we're designed. That's how we're created to be. And, you might look at it like, is it convenience? Is it a conspiracy theory that they don't want us to be face to face? Whatever you want to say. But it's not going to be the same thing. People who want us to live in like virtual reality, like it sounds all fine and dandy, and it might be fun for a minute, but you're gonna lose that part of your humanity by not actually being in front of somebody and being able to use your five senses. So I couldn't agree more there. And that is going back to the leadership portion of it. Like that is so unbelievably powerful. So real fast, we got to jump in to a shout out the sponsor of the show. Pay some bills real quick though. Sure. When we come back, I want to talk about, I want to dig a little bit deeper into, healthcare and insurance, and talk about like the dirty secrets that you believe every employer and individual needs to know immediately. That sounds like something that can be really impactful for listeners out there. So we'll talk about that in 1 minute. Are you struggling to make consistent, valuable content for yourself? Do you want to have an efficient and effective way to create content that attracts the people that you want to connect with in life, the people you want to build relationships with in business? Do you want to be the go-to authority at what you do, at what you're great at? Would it be helpful for you if you had a platform that connects you to incredible people in your industry? The kind of platform that gets you leads and lands you clients without you having to beat down anybody's door or blow up anybody's inbox. Whether you're already creating content or you're desiring to start and it's something that's been kind of burning inside of you for a while, I urge you and encourage you to check out the Pro Podcaster Academy. Get started right now. Join the waitlist at RobZWentz.com.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world globally. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, join the Connected Leaders Academy today. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JASCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So when it comes to healthcare and insurance, a couple of the things that are very important for everybody in our society, yet are some of the most confusing things. Some of the things people avoid the most and try not to pay attention to because it can be too painful or it can make their head hurt too much. What are a few of the dirty secrets that you haven't mentioned already that you believe every employer and individual needs to know?
Well, I'll shameless plug. There are a couple of books that I've written about this. One in particular, The Hidden Healthcare Gold Mine. Excuse me. I always think of things in terms of mindset, so I often add that D. But the Hidden Healthcare Gold Mine is on Amazon, and with that, the things that we talk about are really, honestly, really simple. Okay, really simple. So within healthcare, aside from the person that's managing the plan, which when you typically go to your big box brokerages, it's that big box brokerage, the USIs, the Willis Towers Watson, the Browns and Browns, they're the program managers. They tend to make healthcare look very, very confusing. And by confusing, I mean they'll use terms and I'll just be real straight when I say it, even fear tactics that talk about the way that a person can and can't access care. So they tend to put things in this black box, right? Healthcare is essentially looked at like this black box. And behind the curtain on this black box, it's actually pretty simple, right? You've got your care management, you've got your pharmacy benefit manager, you've got your network of doctors, right? There's a couple other things, but those three are the main things that people tend to look at, or maybe they don't look at them. When we overcomplicate the industry by using jargon, and that's one of the things that, quite frankly, certain companies train brokers to do. Aside from being trained to use jargon that's meant to confuse the employer, they also will lean on the marketing of the multi-billion-dollar healthcare providers and use their influence to then influence the mind of the employer into believing that that's the best way to purchase healthcare. Now, the reality of it is there will be brokers that are again trained by these large corporate entities to tell employers that something called self-funding or alternative funding is a scary thing, and that unless you're the Googles and the ADMs of the world, like the Apples of the world with tens of thousands of employees, that is not something for you and you can never do it. Well, the reality of it is you can self-fund or partially self-fund down to 5 people. Typically, in a more comfortable space, it's about 50 people. But these employers are being led to believe that they can't, so they get on what's called a fully insured plan. Well, the thing about a fully insured plan, one of those BUCA plans that we talked about earlier from one of those carriers, is that the way that it works, when you break it down in really simple terms, it looks a lot like self-funding. Let me explain. You pay a certain amount of money each month, and all of this money goes into one essentially pool. Now, in the world of fully insured plans, they pre-fund all of the expected claims for the year. So for the year 2025, somebody in the back that knows numbers really well says that this group, based on your name, your date of birth, social security information, all your medical history, that this group is going to have this many claims. And those claims are going to cost this much to the company. So there's that cost of the claim. Then they build in the administrative fee. Then they build in the compensation for the broker. Then they build in the compensation and the profits for the company on top of that. They build in the retention bonuses. They build in the pharmacy benefit bonuses. They build in all these other mechanisms into the plan and then give the employer one single price. And because they wrap it all up in a nice, pretty box and seemingly make it easy to understand, they lean on the ignorance of the employer to say, hey, this is a good idea. But in reality, you can strip away all of those bonuses. Now, there needs to be some admin fees in there because somebody's got to do the work. But you can strip away all of those bonuses, even the commissions, right, which we're actually advocating, and then give a much leaner premium to the employer. Because the broker doesn't educate the employer on this, the employer's left believing that Blue Cross, United, Cigna, and Aetna are the only game in town, and that because they only have 250 employees or 370 employees, that they're not big enough to self-fund. Well, the reality of it is, when you have a smaller organization, you typically know more about your people. You can actually have more conversations with them, just generally speaking, not to give up any HIPAA information or anything like that. In those conversations, you know more about the body that's making this business run. In those larger organizations, you typically don't. So with that smaller organization, it's easier to communicate the right information. It's easier to disseminate the educational pieces that need to be understood and check that understanding so that they can learn to use the healthcare the right way. The other misconception is that one open enrollment event is enough to educate a consumer on how to use their healthcare throughout the year. Now, yes, some of the big brokerages will augment the one meeting with an app, right?
Mm-hmm.
And an app is great. I don't want to. We use apps. I don't want to take away from the power of an app. Um, but let me ask you, Rob, and this is not to poke or jab. Did you go to school for health insurance?
No, did not.
Neither did 99.9% of the employees at companies across the country.
Yeah.
Without them going to school for health insurance, which essentially the licensure the licensure and continuing credits and things that we do on a regular basis, that we do, why would you leave the education? And with all due respect to my human resources folks as well, why would you leave that as a broker? Why would you leave that responsibility on them
Mm.
and an app? It doesn't make sense, right? But the common thing, and I literally did almost 40 of these presentations through another one of my consulting businesses with in tandem with brokers last year. They don't continuously educate.
Mm-hmm.
So you take a person that hasn't gone to school for this, that barely understands what they're paying for in the first place. You give them 1 hour jab with everything that they need to supposedly know for the year, and you leave them an app to ask questions if they have any trouble.
Well, it's kind of just I mean, the way it looks to me, and there might be good intentions behind it, but it's like, well, hey, if you want the information, it's there. It's to kind of cover what we tried. If you
Yeah,
want to learn more,
yeah.
you can learn more. If you want to spend your own time learning, you can check out the app. I would say you said like 99.9% of people didn't do any education around health insurance. Well, I'd say 99.9% also don't go to the app to read the information also,
Mhm.
right? It's kind of just there to cover that base. At least from my perspective, that's what it seems like.
You're 100% accurate. And there are omni-channel approaches that actually make more sense for people, but not just one time is the thing. So one big email blast isn't going to do it. One app that's there isn't going to do it. There needs to be, again, vision and touching the troops. And that vision can't come from the broker. It needs to come from the internal management and leadership staff. So there's the other secret. The brokers don't educate and bring together that management and leadership staff to cause change internally at that level first so that it can disseminate down. They literally, and again, I'm going to lose some friends over this, and that's fine. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't give a damn. They show up at the open enrollment meeting because it's going to pay them 6 figures to do so with the companies that they're with. They might have very nice salaries or they might have vested already. And their job is to keep the business on the books, to keep the bonuses coming in, but not actually work deep into that company to understand the pain points and make change. But as opposed to really just keeping them at the status quo.
Yeah.
And that's, again, another one of those dirty little secrets that's there. There's a lot of, like I said, backhand stuff that goes on, just the conversations behind closed doors with these previous brokerages and carriers that I'd worked with. It would shock you about this industry.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't be that shocked. It might be
All things considered, right?
Honestly, it's kind of assumed. I think if you have your eyes open and you're paying attention, it's kind of assumed there's underhanded things going on. It's kind of assumed as companies get bigger. Also, when things are smaller, I think it's much easier to care more about the people because there's not as many people. When things get bigger, kind of going back to what I said earlier, and it's not about people anymore; it's about numbers. you're not going to care about a number like you're going to care about a person. So when a
Exactly.
person becomes a number, that care goes away.
Mhm.
And so managing that is as a whole different game altogether. And unfortunately, we're coming to the end of this episode, running out of time to dive more into that. But I find this fascinating, and I really love what you're doing, and I want to encourage people to check out more about what you're doing. So if they're loving this conversation and they do want to dive more in, they can go to paul.health, right? Which is what an easy website to go to. Paul.health. What do you want them to do when they go to the website?
First and foremost, I want them to connect with me on LinkedIn and any other social media where they see value. My primary focus is LinkedIn because I do a lot of work with the business community. But much like my podcast is the Potpourri Place podcast show, we're more than just what we do. So at paul.health, you can see the podcast, you can see the books, you can see the calendar, you can see the reviews for the company. But through my social media handles, which are all Paul H. Flowers Jr., you can see the rest of me.
Yeah.
So it might seem odd that a person that's like in this business world is not just business, business, business. Yeah, okay. And we got to sleep and we've got children and we have spouses and we have fun things we like to do, like read and play chess, right? It's not all work all the time. And again, I highlight that with my podcast, but I do like to put that paul.health site out there for the world, namely because you can connect with me quickly in that professional place. But there's also my Linktree link where you can find all my social medias as well.
And all of that information is in the body for this episode. So if you want to contact Paul, reach out to him, send him a friend request, shoot him a DM, ask him questions. I've been on the Potpourri Place, by the way, and you are a wonderful interviewer. And it shows, and that's, I think, the main point that I wanted to make here and that you're making also is that it's about people.
Right.
And when you set your intentions on actually connecting with people and caring about them, it changes everything. It changes how you show up, but it also changes how people show up with you and connect with you. And I think that's the difference maker here when you talk about, reframing health insurance, re-envisioning it. It's about people. I mean, I even look at, like, I know a lot of nurses and some doctors, and they get so burned out because that the whole system is built around numbers and not around people. And I get it. It's difficult. When there's lots of people who need care, things get big, and then numbers take over, money takes over, and the people get forgotten about. But you see it so much, especially in nurses, how burned out they are.
Right.
Right. And talk about one of the most important jobs on the planet, to keep people alive, to care for people, like the nursing industry. And it's sad to see how overworked they are and kind of like beaten down they are. And I love that you're stepping in. Like I mentioned, Donnie Beaver earlier, I see people out there who really do care about people, who really do want to make a difference.
Right.
And they're doing that because they love people, and no coincidence, you both love God. So that probably has something to do with it also. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Certainly. The things that have made a difference in my life, again, that I don't get paid for, are Landmark, Education, and Toastmasters. These are, again, organizations that are out there. I believe they're both 501c3s. Work on you first. And this is one of those things that ultimately gets overlooked. We think because we go to school, we get a degree, we get a fancy job or house or car, that those external trappings of success actually dictate who we are in the world, who we are to ourselves. So there's a quote that I might at some point get a tattoo of, to thine own self be true, right? Know thyself is one, know thyself, and then to thine own self be true. We should work on learning who and what we are, from whence we came, and doing what we can to enhance that as the world enhances. Because if for 1 second, Rob, anyone listening to the sound of my voice believes that who they were in the past is going to be that person that's going to ultimately help them, if they want to achieve any other longer lasting elements of success or leave a legacy, if they believe that that's going to come from who they've been, then much like I had to learn the hard way, I was sadly mistaken. Right? I did have to crack open a book. I did have to enlist the help of a mentor. And before any of that really made an impact and an effect on me, I had to take a good long look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Know exactly who I was, what I stood for, what I don't stand for, and live my life accordingly. So that would be my advice that I'd share and love to leave with the listeners.
I love that, man. It's the hardest thing you can do, but the best thing you can do is to know who you are, to have a mentor, and to it doesn't mean you don't have to have fun anymore,
Right.
but your ideas of what is fun will change as you
Right.
grow, and that's the real what I found in my own life personally. That's the real magic as your mind starts to be renewed. So the things that you used to find enjoyment in no longer, those things kind of fall away and new stuff comes in that is healthier, that is more impactful, that helps you to meet better people, helps you to grow, helps you to become more of who you were created to be. So I couldn't agree more. We could keep talking for 5 hours. We
Oh man.
can't do that, Paul, 'cause I love talking to you. You're fun to talk to, and you're a wealth of knowledge. So I thank you for that. Another true testimony of breakthrough on the show. Until next time, this has been the Unstuck Movement.